Okay, so to start, just tell me your name, where you were born, when you were born, and where you currently live.
My name is Iris Baker,
Mm-hmm.
aka Jeannie. I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, um, January the 12th, 1957.
Mm-hmm. And where do you live now?
Now I live in South Euclid, Ohio.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about like your childhood, your teenage years. So, where did you grow up? What was your household like? All that kind of stuff.
Um, I grew up with four brothers and my mom and dad, and I was the only girl. Well, actually, it was only two women in the household. And that was me and my mom. And growing up with four brothers was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I used to feel alone sometimes because I felt like I didn't have a sister, and I felt like Cinderella because I had to wash their clothes. I had to do the laundry, um, the cook when my parents were at work, clean the house, babysit my brothers.
Mm-hmm. So, you said you lived in Jacksonville. You were born in Jacksonville. How old were you when you came to Cleveland?
Well, my mother told me I was around. I couldn't have been two because I was still on the bottle,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had to be around one or two when she came up here with me.
Mm-hmm. So, talk about your parents. So, what were they like?
Um, to me, my parents were like down south parents. My mother, she cooked southern foods.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she had a lot of proverbs. She used to always say,
Really?
birds of a feather flock together, and a hard head makes a soft behind. And she had a lot of little sayings she was saying. They were from down south.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them I didn't understand, but as I got older and grown, I come to understand them. And
Mm-hmm.
they seem to be true.
Yeah.
hmm
What about your dad?
My dad, you saw the South in him too. Um, he used to love to cook stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He would cook tongue, rabbit.
Oh.
Um, and then he would have us laughing, talking about he would eat coon when they were growing up, and he would be like, and you had to kill him with a buckshot. And he said
Mm-hmm.
buckshot would be in the meat, and you just chew it and then spit the buckshot out. But yeah, both of my parents were from the South, and it was very evident in them.
Mm-hmm. They were both from Jacksonville, or they were from.
No, actually, they were both from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was from Birmingham, Alabama, and I want to say my dad was too.
Mm-hmm.
But they were both from the deep south.
Uh huh. So, did you know anything about like their upbringing or what they did, their family life?
My mother told me a lot about her upbringing. My mother was one of 10 children,
Mm-hmm.
8 boys and 2 girls. And yeah, they grew up in the deep south. She would tell me how her father, who was my granddaddy, would catch a rabbit or whatever and kill it out by, I guess, the barn. Then they have to let it drain, the blood drain out of it. And um, they had a well
Mm-hmm.
with water where they get water from. And yeah, a lot of old style black roots.
Mm-hmm. So, after you came up here, how often did you guys go down and visit family there?
Not as often as I wished, but I went maybe um, 4 times that I can remember right off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
and it was really fun, different. Like my people are country people. When we went, there were dirt roads with red dirt, and my cousin had a pickup truck. We rode in, remind me of Fred Sanford and Son with that old pickup truck, and Honeybee stayed up the street and had a shotgun if she didn't know you was coming, be in her window, and Granddaddy had a yard with a bunch of old abandoned cars with the trunks open, and that was where the dogs stay. They'd be in the trunk. That was their dog house, and it was just amazing the country living as opposed to city living.
Was it like a culture shock type of thing, or were you easily adjusted when you would go visit?
No, it was a culture shock for me.
It was.
Yeah.
What was like one of the things that had you like, oh my gosh, I am not at home?
Couple of things. So we had relatives named, it was Uncle O.D. They stayed on a farm also, and we had stayed there. Well, everybody had got their shower that morning. I was last. They ran out of water. How do you run out of water? Well, they had a tank in the back. To get some water to drink, they would go to the well and actually dip the bucket down and roll it back up. I wasn't used to that. Everything we had for breakfast came off the farm. I mean, everything. We had sausage. Uncle D had pigs, and I guess he cooked, made sausage and ham and stuff out of them. Everything we ate for breakfast that morning had came off that farm, and that was just amazing. It wasn't like he went to Giant Eagle or a grocery store and bought these things. They were all from their farm.
Yeah.
That amazed me. What else? I learned about hogs. Uncle D told me I could feed the hogs. Well, I didn't know you don't step inside the gate, the fence. I stepped inside the fence, the porter. I looked around the corner. It was these huge, huge. No, those weren't pigs. They were hogs coming at me. I couldn't drop that bucket fast enough and get back on the other side of the fence.
How old were you? Do you remember when that happened?
Maybe 12. Something like that. Walking through the chickens in the yard. Well, the rooster will attack you.
Really?
Protecting the chickens. You don't just walk through their little group. So it was a lot of things that was different. The dirt roads. When you go out in a backyard, it wasn't a backyard, it's just a field. Yeah. My granddad. Call. I'm sorry, that's the call. But he will say, be careful. They have snakes, and they're just, they're in the grass, they're under the house. Yeah, that kind of got me.
So, once you were growing up here, talk about what it was like growing up here in Cleveland. What were some things you liked to do for fun as a kid or as a teenager?
I remember as a kid riding our bikes every day, all day. Being a girl, I had other female friends. We played jacks. We played kickball. We played any bounce. We played baseball, which is a lot different from this generation. Whereas this generation now, they're on their phones, or they have what's the little hand games and the PlayStations. We didn't have none of that. We had to use our imagination and be creative. We made tire swings, swing on the tire from the tree. We built stuff. We played in the dirt. We did, like I said, we had to be creative, and it was fun.
So you grew up in a house full of brothers. So talk a little bit more about what that was like, especially being the oldest sibling in the house, period.
And the only girl.
Yeah.
I want to say it was horrible. Like I said before, I felt like Cinderella. But now I look back, I'm glad I had four brothers. Even though I was the oldest, as we grew up, it was like they were older than me and were protective of me, each in their own way. And I like that.
So tell me, as a teenager, what were some things that you liked to do once you kind of were a little older, your friends were a little older?
Mm, that's what we did. Play kickball, played outside.
Did you have a favorite place to go?
Well, you know, my mom was real strict with me. I didn't get to just go to the movies with my friends or go to a game with my friends. I was the only girl, and my mom would be, you not running up and down the streets. My young womanhood was spent learning how to cook, learning how to clean up. I used to go to the library a lot. I used to love to read. I actually had a little job at the library after school, putting books away and sorting through different material. But I didn't get to hang out and go to house parties and stuff like that.
Do you think, because you were the oldest, so you said she was more strict with you, do you think she got more lenient, like with your brothers as they got older?
Yes. And I used to, I questioned that. I asked my dad about that. And he used to say, girls can't do what boys do. Like my brothers, they get to come in at 1 or 2. And I would be like, how come I can't do that when I was, that age? And he'd say, girls just can't do what boys do.
How did you feel about that?
At the time, I thought it was unfair, but as I grew up, I understood, and I'm glad they were like they were. Now, I know how to cook. I know how to keep my house clean, and I know how to take care of my children. And it was all because my mom kept me in the house, made me learn that. You got some women, they don't even know how to fry an egg, or they don't know how to clean their house. And they don't know. They weren't taught that. They were allowed to rip and run, but my mom had on saying, a woman can't run the streets and keep her house. Something's going to lack.
What were some of your favorite things about both of your parents?
My mom, I remember her always having a proverb. I call them proverbs, but she always had a saying to relate to a situation. Like I said earlier, she would say stuff like, a hard head makes a soft ass. You be doing something you ain't got no business, and she's telling you, don't do this, or, that's wrong, and you want to keep doing it, and she would be like, a hard head make a soft ass. And sure enough, whatever it was you were doing, you ended up messing up, and, and then you look at your mom, she didn't even have to say it. It was like, I told you so.
Mhm.
So she always had a saying, and those are those little sayings that stay in my head now
Mhm.
and help guide me.
What about your dad? Favorite things?
He used to call me Jeannie Gal.
Mhm.
And I can go real far back with my daddy. He used to have little surprises for me. He would come home from work and he sit in the chair and be like, "Go get my house shoes. I got something for you." And I go get his house shoes and I come back. One time he had a box, and when I opened it, it was this coat with fur around the collar. That was big to me. A coat with some fur. Of course, it wasn't real fur, but it's to surprise me with little gifts like that.
Mhm.
And his cooking, his tongue, and some of the stuff he would cook. Not saying I would eat it, but yeah, he could make a meal out of anything.
Mhm. So
Mhm.
once you were older, in high school, getting ready to graduate high school, what were some of the plans that you had, or some things you were excited about?
Well, actually, I did go to high school, but I dropped out.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't realize then how important the education in school was.
Mhm.
Um,
What grade was it?
I dropped out. I think it was 10th grade when I dropped out.
Mhm.
But as I started getting older and being in the work world and getting all the bottom end jobs, it started making me realize how important having an education was. I went back, I got my GED,
Mhm.
and I went on to go to nursing school for licensed practical nurse. And it paid off. It made a education can make just even a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to go to school for 8 years. You know, some people go to school for 4 and 8 years and they still, because of the subject that they chose, it might not be a demand for,
Mhm.
and they still have a problem getting a job. But I was lucky, and it made a big difference in my life, in my work life, and financial life.
How old were you when you decided to go back and get your GED and then
I
go to school for
believe I was
nursing?
like 24.
Mhm. And you
20,
went right after to get your nursing
yeah.
certifications?
hmm I went and got my GED, and then I found a nursing school
Mhm.
and went to.
What were some of your, did you have any like fears about going back to school, or were you just like excited, or was there any what feelings, what emotions were
Well,
you
I was
feeling about it?
excited because what I was going for, I was looking forward to. When I was a little girl playing with my dolls, I used to always play nurse.
Mhm.
The dolls were my patients, and I can remember playing nurse. And when my mom would watch the soap operas, um, and they would have scenes in them where they were at the hospital and whatnot, it was always interesting to me. And here it is, I want to be a nurse.
Mhm.
Um, I was married at the time, and my husband was a big encouragement. And I was like, at first, I was like, I'm not sure what I want to do. He said, "Well, I want you to take some time and think of, and be practical.
Mhm.
Think of if you could be anything in the world, what would you be?"
Mhm.
And he told me to take a couple of days and think about it, which I did. And I came back and I told him, I said, I always wanted to be a nurse. I said, I remember playing nurse with my dolls, and I like that kind of stuff. And he said, well, you need to look up nursing schools and pursue that.
Mhm.
At first, I was a little bit nervous. I didn't think I could do the time. I'm like, at that time to be an RN took 4 years. I'm like, can I go to school for 4 years without? dropping out. And I didn't. I took the 2 year nursing program. I said, I know I can do 2 years, which I did.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing, and I did it with a breeze, good grades, and I enjoyed it. The only thing I would do different is I would have went back and continued on for RN.
Mm-hmm.
But once I did those 2 years and I started working, I was saying, okay, I'm gonna work a little bit, then I'm gonna go back, which I started working and I got comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, the salary might have been at that time $17, $18, which was a good salary.
Mm-hmm.
Then it went to 20 something dollars, and that was a good salary. But had I went on back for RN, I could have been up there with $40 an hour or
Right.
something. But there's an old saying, and I believe my mother used to say something to this effect: um, don't put stuff off. Once I finished school, finished that LPN course, I should have immediately went on for RN. But that break can cause you to get comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and I should have went on, but I didn't. But all in all, it did help me, and I can't really complain. God has blessed me and gave me a comfortable life
Mm-hmm.
with just the LPN.
Yeah.
I wonder if I had went to be a RN or get my PhD, where would I be?
Mm-hmm.
But
I know you
I'm
said
blessed where I am,
yeah.
and
I know you said your husband at the time was supportive of you going back and working on that. Did you feel like you got the same level of support from like other people in your family?
yes,
Everybody was
yes.
on board.
Hmm.
That's good. So, what advice would you give to a young person, whether they're just like single, worried about just them, or if they also are married or in a relationship like you were, who were thinking about taking a shift in like what they're doing in life and making a change because they want to work on something else? What advice would you give to them?
Pursue your dreams, and hopefully, ideally, you had the support of your husband or your boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
That can make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
But pursue your dreams. Don't let don't let nobody tell you, okay, that's enough. You went to school for 2 years, that's enough. If you want to go and get your PhD, pursue that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
So,
keep putting it off. You know, sometimes we put stuff off. I'll do it then, or I'll wait till after I get a new car, or after I take care of this. Or,
right.
um, you always have something to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
Always. Because you take care of that, then it's going to be something else. So when you think about them and you can do it, you should do it. You'll love yourself in the end for it.
So you talked about how you were married. Um, how old were you when you got married?
I believe I was 23, 24.
Mm-hmm. And how long had you been with him before you guys decided that you wanted to do it?
I had known him, I think we had knew each other like 2, 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And what were some? How did you know that you were ready to get married, or did you feel like you knew? Like, what was your thought process when you guys made that decision?
I was scared. Um, I was nervous. I wasn't sure. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I was very nervous and unsure.
Mm-hmm. What made you say, even though you were nervous, what made you say, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do this?
Because I felt I had finally met someone who truly cared about me, not because um, for sex or she's cute or I felt I had finally met somebody that genuinely had good intentions for me and really loved me and cared about me.
How did your
Everybody could see it.
Yeah, how did your family feel about him and about you guys getting married?
Well, my mom, everybody approved of it, but we ended up eloping.
Talk about that.
Well, we were going to plan a wedding, but my mom wanted this big, elaborate, elegant wedding, and we didn't. We were simple. We were like, we just want to get married with a couple of people and be done with it. And I didn't know what to do. I even cried. So my husband went to we both went to the pastor to ask him to give us some advice and counsel. And he said, well, why don't we do this to keep everybody happy? He said, you guys aren't ready financially for the 500 guestless wedding. He said, your mom is, and we didn't want to continue being together and not being married. So he says, I'll marry you now. He says, then when you guys get financially able, then you can have a wedding that your mom wants. Well, like I said before, you have to do it right away because otherwise you'll get comfortable. And we got comfortable being married. And for a long time, nobody even knew we were married. They thought we were just living together. But we were actually married. And I forgot what day it was. Something transpired. And I ended up telling my mom, actually, we married. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, we haven't been living together in sin. I believe my Aunt Louise, who was a Jehovah's Witness, that came to Cleveland to visit. And I think Mom had a house full, and I invited her to come to our house, me and my husband's house, and told her she could stay the night there. And she refused. She says, you guys are fornicating, you're living together in sin, and you're not married. And I remember that's when it hurt me for her to say that. And my mom was looking like, yeah, y'all not. And I was like, well, for your information, Aunt Louise and Mom and everybody, we are married. We're not living in sin. And everybody was like, especially my mother, that's the reaction that I remember. And she was like, what? And I explained to her what the pastor had said. But that wedding never came. We got comfortable, you know, buying cars and whatever else, and we never had the wedding.
How did your mom respond once she found out? Like, how did that affect your relationship?
It really didn't affect our relationship. My mother was a strong mom. She she would hurt, but she would keep on going. You know, it wasn't like, well, I ain't never talking to you again, or you shouldn't have did that. She was like, oh well, you know, I thought we was gonna have a wedding, but you the one only got married, so
Mhm. How did your dad respond? Was he kind of neutral about it, or did he also really want you to have that big wedding too?
I think it didn't matter to him. He was drinking Budweiser. So he gonna get him a six pack. Oh well.
Mhm. What advice would you give to people who are considering getting married or who are newlyweds? What would you tell them?
I think marriage is a wonderful thing. I believe in marriage. Tells you in the Bible about speaks about marriage in the Bible, and I believe it's a wonderful thing when you have that one.
Mhm.
You know, it's not always a bed of roses, but if you have that communication, you guys grow together, and it's a wonderful thing to have somebody to share, somebody that, like they say, two heads are better than one.
Mhm.
All that, and I believe it's a wonderful thing
What would
with
you
the
tell?
right person.
Yeah. What would you tell them about when it comes to having like your family, whether it be like your parents or siblings or whoever, involved in like your relationship?
I think that's a good thing to be involved, not over involved, because from a female perspective, you're supposed to follow your husband,
Mhm.
confer with your husband, and I think that's where the line should be drawn. You got a husband now. If your husband says, "Well, baby, I think we ought to move to New York. The job is offering me better pay and this, that," and he makes the choice for the marriage. I think you should go, or go by what your husband guides. You know, a lot of times you had a family in there. A mom said, don't go with him. Don't do this. He taking you away. You, you know, you and your husband are one now,
Mhm.
and ideally, you have a good God fearing, practical thinking husband,
Yeah.
and he's a good leader and guider and um, follow your husband. Don't let family, because that's your family, but this is your family now.
Yeah. Was that something that it took you a while to figure out, or did that come to you pretty easily? Having that boundary.
It took me years of watching that, growing. They say as you grow older, you become wiser. And I think you become wiser because you see so much. And after years of that,
Mhm.
you're learning. Um, yeah,
Mhm.
you know, I've seen and I experienced it like way, and for example, when I was married, we had relocated to California. It killed me.
When did you do that? When did you guys move?
We had got married, but nobody knew we was married
Right.
at that time. And he wanted to relocate to California. He felt life would be better for us. He said it was a good environment to raise the kids, the area that he wanted to move to. And I had me being the only girl, never left home. I was reluctant to go.
Mhm. It was scary.
Very scary to the point he left me. He did. I mean, he was like, I was like, but what about my mom? I've never been in my family. And After a couple of months, he told me to think about it. This is what I feel is best for us. And I came back and told him, I said, I don't know. And he says, I tell you what. He says, you stay here with your mom. He says, but I'm going to California.
Mhm.
And he did. I couldn't believe he left me, but he did. We communicated every day. He would write me letters, send me pictures, telling me how nice the area was and how much I would enjoy it, and uh, the school district for because we wanted to have a family. And at some point, my mother told me, she said, girl, you got a husband out there. You better get up and go out there with your husband before you find him one of them California women.
How long did it take you to finally decide to go?
I think he had been out there like 6 months.
Mhm. So it was a little minute.
He knew the area. He knew his way around. He had bought a car and all that. So I finally went and getting to being tight with the family. I would call back home to my mom at the drop of a dime.
Mhm.
The phone bill went up to like a ridiculous amount, $700-800.
Oh my gosh.
And my husband was furious. He said, you cannot call your mom every time you stump your big toe. And I was like, what? I couldn't believe he was talking to me like that. I said, but that's my mom. I got it. And I had to learn, right? I'm here with my husband.
Mhm.
And no, I can't call my mother every time I stump my big toe, you know? And I started learning that. I started looking at other couples
Mhm.
that were doing well together in their relationship. And yeah, that Linda didn't call her mom
Yeah.
in Florida 3 times a day and whatnot. Not to say you don't never talk to her, but you got to be practical. Now you got a husband.
Mhm.
And I started learning that and looking around.
Mhm.
And as I aged, I learned.
Yeah. So when you moved out to California, um, how long did it take you to get adjusted to your new space? Everything was new. You're in a new state, far away from where you know and the people you know. How long do you think it took you
Mm,
to
maybe about
a year?
year and a half. It was so strange because the weather, for one, was hot, but you get adjusted to that. But stuff like it's Christmas, it's 80 degrees outside,
Mhm.
and there's the Santa Claus, and they got lights up, and you're like, where's the snow?
Yeah.
Because you're so used to a white Christmas being from the East Coast. And
Mhm.
so it took me about a year, maybe a year and a half to adjust to even just the people.
Mhm. What city did you live in out there?
We stayed in Stockton, California,
Mhm.
which is between Sacramento and San Francisco.
Mhm. Did you find any places there that were kind of places that you really liked and kind of became a core place for you to go?
What do you mean?
Like like while you were out there and learning your new environment and everything, what were some of the places that you really enjoyed going when you had free time or anything like that?
Well, I was married, and most of my free time was spent with my husband.
Mhm.
But they used to have outdoor concerts free
Uh-huh.
at the park. The weather's beautiful, and that was, you know,
Mhm.
and I used to love to go to the parks.
Mhm.
We would go to this one park called McKinley Park. Um, and let me know the weather is nice and it gets so hot in the daytime. You really don't come out during the day unless you have to.
Mhm.
Um, when the evening comes and it's cooled off, then you come out, you go to the park, and that's when you kick it.
Mhm.
And I used to love to go to the park.
Mhm. So how old were you when you had your first kid?
Nick, Nikki was born when I was 32, 1,
32, 31.
32 or 31.
Mhm. And so what were some of the things that you were nervous about or excited about when you first found out that you were going to have a baby?
My mind ran wild. One, I couldn't believe it. God had blessed me. We both didn't have children, so this was the first child for both of us.
Was this your first husband?
Hmm.
Okay.
And it was his first child and mine. He was very excited. He thought it was going to be a boy, so he went and got CJ tattooed right here. I said, well, what if it's not a boy? You know, CJ for Charlie Jr.
Yeah.
Um, he said if it wasn't a boy, the CJ could be his initials. His name was Charlie.
Okay.
You know, and he said it could stand for Charlie and Jeannie. I'm like, okay, that's practical. Um, I was very nervous. Once again, I think I started calling my mother 3 times a day.
Mhm.
I had never been pregnant, getting big, and your feet swell up, your emotions, and but it was a good pregnancy, and it was a happy pregnancy.
Mhm. So you were pregnant out in California, right? And so what was one of the hardest parts about kind of being away from your mom and people who are usually who you go to at a time like that to help you out and give you advice and all of that kind of stuff?
It was hard to be away from my mom. I needed my mom.
Mhm.
I wish I should have came back here to be pregnant, but I couldn't. But my husband was very supportive. You know, he would buy me little cards because I'm huge. It's hot and my feet swollen. And he would come home from work and he have a little card for me. I remember one particular card had a little kitten on the front holding on to a pole saying hang in there, and you know, he would try to keep me content. I had a thing for shrimp with fish, and he would drive 3 miles, 5 miles to get it from
Aw.
this one particular place, and stuff like that. So it was a happy pregnancy, but I needed my mom.
Mhm.
I wish my mom
Yeah.
had
Did
been.
she ever come out there to visit? How often did you guys see each other once you had moved?
Um, After the baby was born, I came back to see my mom.
Mhm.
I really needed my mom. She needed to see this baby. I just like, oh my God. When Nikki was 6 months, 6 weeks old, I asked the doctor, could she fly?
Mhm.
And he said, yeah. Me and my husband talked about it. At first, he was real reluctant. But then I, I was like, I got to see my mom. I got to take this baby. I got to go see my mom with this baby. And I did.
You went by yourself? He
Hmm.
stayed?
Me and Nikki. And I think we stayed a week, maybe 5 days.
Mhm.
And it was very satisfying. Um, I don't know. I just needed my mom. I needed to see her to see this baby. Is this okay? What do I do?
Mhm.
And
How did
yeah,
she react when you came out?
she was elated. She was very happy.
Mhm. Yeah. So, what was the trip like? Like when you were back home, brought Nikki back home. Talk about what the trip was like.
Uh, it was very. The plane ride was nice. When we came home, it was just real nice. I saw all my brothers, and
Mhm.
it was like Nikki was this little celebrity. You know, everybody, you know, oh, the new baby.
Mhm.
And it was real nice.
Mhm. Who do you think was the most excited to see the baby?
My mother.
Really?
Hmm.
So, what about when you had Tay? How old were you? I mean, not Tay. Yeah, he's the middle. How old were you when you had Tay?
Well, I think I was like 36, 37.
Mhm.
I think it was in kindergarten actually.
Mhm.
Um, when he when he was born, the kids in our kindergarten class they had made a little card. And they had all signed it. You know, congratulations on your baby, your little brother, and
Mhm.
so that's how I remember how old she was. It's like a 5 year gap in there.
Mhm. And the Tay's dad is not Nikki's dad.
No,
So what happened with Nikki's dad?
unfortunately, when Nikki was about 6 months old, he passed.
What happened?
He was sick.
Okay.
I don't usually go into details about it no more, but yeah, he was sick
Mhm.
and he passed.
So how did you kind of adjust to having help, having your husband with you, to kind of having to do it by yourself for a while?
It was horrible. It
Mhm.
was horrible. I had to go get help. I went to a psychiatrist. I felt like a little girl lost at the mall.
Mhm. What were some things that kind of helped you cope?
God,
Mhm.
because I would talk to my mom. I would cry. I didn't understand. Um, I got this new baby. What am I going to do? Um, he's supposed to be here, and it wasn't supposed to be like this. Um, where's the daddy? Where's my husband? We were
Yeah.
supposed to be this the happy family, and I couldn't believe it, and
Mhm.
I wasn't doing very well.
Mhm.
Um,
And you guys were still in California when it happened.
mm
So how
But I came back home.
pretty soon after, or it took you a
Yeah,
while to come home?
pretty soon. My mom did fly out there for that,
Mhm.
and when I look back, part of me said I wish I had stayed because I did enjoy it, but I needed to come home, and my mom said that when she flew out there.
Mhm.
And I was like, no, I was a mess. I was a mental mess. And my mom told me, she said, you know what? Why don't you come back home for a little while? She said, you can come back. And I had friends out there. And my husband had family there.
Mhm.
And she said, but why don't you come home for a minute? You know, let me help you with the baby while you get yourself together.
Mhm.
And with that, I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So I did. I came back home.
How supportive? I know you just said your mom was very helpful during that time. How supportive was the rest of your family?
Very, very supportive. Um, I'm glad. You know, it's sometimes you sit back and you wonder, why did this happen? Or why did that happen? And you can't understand why. And then later they say there's a reason for everything.
Mhm.
Um, the good, the bad comes together for the good. I think that's how it goes. And had I not come back, Nikki would have never known her grandmother
Mhm.
like she does. Um, Nikki wouldn't have known her family,
Yeah.
even her father's family. They're in Warren, her grandfather, her
Mhm.
father's father, and sisters and brothers. So um, it was good that I came back for me mentally.
Mhm.
But I went to grieving groups, all that. And it seemed like I just couldn't find the answer. All I wanted to know was why.
Right.
And it was like nobody could tell me why.
Yeah.
I started going back to church.
How long had you been not going?
To church.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in California, I was going to church. You know, I always missed a Sunday or two.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but so it wasn't like it had been some years or nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyway, I went to church. I hadn't been maybe in 2 months because I had been back here maybe about a month or two.
Mm-hmm.
So I hadn't been to church since I had been back here. And from out there, before I came back, I hadn't been to church about 3 weeks or so. Another month.
Yeah.
So I missed church for a few months. But anyway, you know, somebody told me for the people that don't go very often, but when something happens, they go, at least you know where to go.
Yeah.
And something say, gee, you need to go home. And that's how I looked at church. Anyway, I went to church, and I remember I was at church, and I had Nikki, and the service was over, but I sat there, and at some point I started crying. I was sitting there just crying, and I wasn't boo-booing out loud, but I was crying and tears was running. I was sitting there rocking Nikki. And the pastor's wife came over to me, and she was like, you all right? What's the matter? And my man was so messed up, I would talk to anybody, just tell me why.
Mm-hmm.
So I told her what happened, you know, and I was grieving. I needed the answers.
Yeah.
And something that she told me stood out. I'll never forget it to the day I die. She said, you know what? She said, baby, you gonna drive yourself crazy trying to figure out why. Why he gone? You know, I'm like, we got a new baby. God, why you taking now? I didn't understand why. And she said, you'll drive yourself crazy trying to figure out why. She said, that's between him and God.
Mm-hmm.
She said, you trying to figure out why. You gonna run yourself crazy. And I would never forget that. And that stuck with me. And I went home and I thought about it. And like I said, I never forgot it, but it made sense.
Yeah.
You know? And maybe it ain't for me to know why. You know? It ain't for me to know why this person died. Or what God said, come on home.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And with that gave me some relief. Started. You know, she said, what you do? She said, you pray. And you ask God to lift that, because I told her my chest would hurt. I would cry. My chest actually would hurt. Like somebody had punched me in my chest. Real pain. And I told her, she said, you pray, baby. She said, you ask God to lift that heaviness up off your chest. And believe this, I did. I can't tell you what day, what hour, but all I know is I looked up one day and I was like, my chest don't hurt me no more.
Mm-hmm.
Not like it used to. And the day I still miss him, but it don't hurt no more.
Yeah.
I'm not asking why anymore. God knows why. And it don't hurt. So my memories now of him, my grieving isn't a sad grieving anymore. I'm glad I had the memories, the time with him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I got a beautiful daughter. So that changed over the years.
Yeah. What advice would you give to somebody who recently lost their partner too?
If they anything like I was, um, I think most people would be like, God, why? Well, I've even heard of people getting mad at God,
Mm-hmm.
saying, God did this or God let my loved one die. Um, you gotta leave that alone. Like Pastor's wife told me, that's between God and your loved one. And at some point, be prayerful. God, ask God to help you understand and help you with your feelings. And He will. And you're going to always miss Him. Always, to the day you die. You're going to miss that person. Um, but after a while, you're going to miss them with good memories. You know, you're going to miss them, but you ain't going to cry. You know, so.
Mm-hmm. So, you said some years later you ended up meeting Tay's dad and you had Tay. Talk about that relationship. How did you meet him? All that kind of stuff.
I met him because I was grieving my husband so bad, and my friends, out of concern, they said, girl, you need to meet somebody new. That'll take your man off of him. And I've heard that before. They said the way to get over a boyfriend or to get over somebody is to meet somebody new. I'm sure you've heard that before. And one of my friends introduced me to Tay and them there.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, when I met him, I was still grieving Nikki's father, which was maybe like a year later.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go. I was depressed.
Right.
Um, my friends was like, "Give him a chance," and so I talked to him on the phone, and I think it ended up being like what they call a rebound
Uh-huh.
because my decision making still wasn't clear because I was still really grieving.
Right.
And I would talk to him and he would listen till 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning. You know, I'm talking to him about my feelings and my grieving over my dead husband. But I started liking him and loving him because to me, he was there listening.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and he had issues that maybe if I hadn't been grieving, I would have seen.
Mm-hmm.
They say when you break up with somebody, you shouldn't meet somebody else too soon
Mm-hmm.
because they call those relationships a rebound.
Yeah.
You're just looking for somebody to feel that hole, feel that emptiness.
Right.
And that's how I met Tay and father. And
Him
we,
and Tay and Day have the same dad, right?
yes.
Okay. Just for the clarification. So when you found out you were pregnant with Tay, what were some of the feelings that you had?
I was happy. Um, First, I got to go back to when I was married. I couldn't get pregnant,
Uh-huh.
and the doctors had told me what the likelihood of you getting pregnant would be so slim. And I went through all that. My husband wanted a son. I wanted to give him a son, and I was going back and forth to the doctor, and they doing this test and that test, and so when I had Nikki, that's why I named her Danielle. Danielle means a gift from God,
Mhm.
because I truly felt like she was a gift from God. And when I had her, and as she was growing, I was like, I never took birth control,
Mhm.
and it was like I couldn't get pregnant again. And I thought I'd never get pregnant again because Nikki just so was like a miracle,
Right.
you know. And so when I got pregnant with Tay, I was very happy that I was able to get pregnant again, and she didn't have to be our only child.
Mhm. So how did your mom and everybody else respond to you being pregnant again?
My mom is always supportive. You know, she might say, "You needed another baby like you needed a hole in it." And she wasn't that fun or
Oh.
curdy. She said, "You don't want to have a baby by this fool." That's what she said.
Oh my god.
But she was supportive of anything I needed, and you know, uh, I was her daughter and I was pregnant. She wasn't gonna let me do without nothing, and baby shower and
Mhm.
the whole works. But she did tell me, "Girl, you need another baby like you need a hole in the head. You done had a baby by this fool. No, you haven't. What is wrong with you?" And I was like, I ain't want Nikki to be the only child. I thought I could never get pregnant again. And so it was exciting to me to be able to get pregnant again
Mhm.
without going to the doctors and testing and all that.
Yeah.
And then within a year later, they say, "Ask and you shall receive." Oh, my cup runneth over. It wasn't a year later, and I was pregnant with Day Day. I was like, "Wait a minute, hold up,
It's too much now.
too much now." At first, I couldn't get pregnant. Now I'm popping them out like little rabbits. Cause Tay and Darren is like 13 months apart, literally.
Mhm.
I had a double stroller, 2 car seats. It was like having twins. But now I have 3 children, and they're beautiful children.
How did Nikki take being the oldest sibling, and what was kind of all your kids' relationships to each other growing
Nikki
up?
has always been the leader. Nikki was the oldest. You knew Nikki was the oldest. Nikki was uh, like a little mama.
Mhm.
You know, she helped she loved her little brothers. She helped me with them, and she was happy to have 2 little brothers. I think she might have wanted a sister too, but
Mhm.
yeah, Nikki was wonderful. Mm.
What about um your other 2 kids? What was everybody's relationship like? Were there any who were closer, or kind of how was their dynamic growing up?
Well, like I said, Nikki was the most wonderful sister.
Right.
Accepting, was glad to see him come home and all. Tay was a little different. Because I think I got pregnant too soon with another baby.
Mhm.
And Tay seemed to have sibling rivalry from the day Darren came home.
Mhm.
Oh, it was like he didn't like Darren. But really, he was still a little baby.
Right.
He would try to push Darren out my lap. Darren had the little swing, and when that Tay would get his butt in there.
Mhm.
um, yeah, Tay didn't like the new baby coming home.
No. So how long do you think it took for them to kind of get over that?
For Tay to get over it,
Uh-huh.
I don't think he got over it yet.
You think it's still there?
I think so.
What are some of your favorite memories of your kids growing up?
Oh, it's so many. Oh, it's so many. I don't even think I have a favorite one. All of them.
Mm-hmm.
All
Give me a
of them.
couple
The
then.
good, the bad. Let me see. With the boys, like I told you, they were like twins. They were so close in age. But my memories of the boys that stand out, they always brought home an animal. Here they come with a dog, walking home from school. With the dog come, he followed us home. Of all the kids getting off the bus, the dog followed y'all home. Um, they had a rabbit. I bought the rabbit for him. Nikki brought a little hamster home from school. The classroom had a hamster, and it was her turn to bring the hamster home for the weekend. I don't know what happened, but the hamster died. I was like, oh my God, that's the school hamster. Well, needless to say, I didn't know. But I be going to work. Nikki would babysit. They put the hamster in a shoebox with the Bible and buried it in the backyard. They had a little funeral for the hamster. Um, Tay went up in the tree and got the bird's nest with the little baby birds in it. Brought it home. I'm at work. I'm working 3 to 11. I get home like 12. They're in the bed, but I'm in the kitchen. We have an attached garage. I'm in the kitchen. I'm hearing tweet, 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 tweet. The next morning, and I'm like, what is that tweeting? I look in the garage. They done turned a bucket upside down and got the nests on the bucket with the baby birds. And Tay said he gonna dig up worms to feed. I didn't know what to do because I didn't grow up being an animal person. I remember I called my brother Patrick, and Patrick had to explain to them, you can't bother the baby birds. They need their mother. And I heard that once human hands have been on the babies, or the mother will reject them. And Patrick came over and explained that. Like I said, I remember animals with my boys. I remember Tay rescued the squirrel with the broken leg, brought him home. He's scooting around the garage with a broken leg. The dogs, you name it. Yeah, they used to bring animals home. That's what my memories with my boys. And with Nikki, she was a good girl. Nikki used to be involved in a lot of different activities. That's what I remember with her. Cheerleading.
Mm-hmm.
She cheerleaded for years. So I was always picking her up, dropping her off, or sitting there watching. Stuff like that. She ice skating,
Mm-hmm.
gymnastics. And I was always busy with her doing that. The boys, like I said, I remember animals, putting them in activities. I did. I put Darren in football. Darren and Tay. Tay was a little rebellious, didn't want to follow directions. Walked off the football field, so he wasn't playing ever again.
Oh my God.
But
How instrumental were your brothers or your other siblings, like your family, in helping you like raise your children?
very instrumental. They were the father that wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
especially Nikki. She didn't have a father she could call.
Right.
Um, she didn't have a father she could go to. And she said something to that effect at my father's funeral. My brothers were her fathers. My daddy, her granddaddy, was her father.
Mhm.
Her Uncle Wayne was her father. They were the men in her life
Yeah.
that kind of took the place of her father
Mhm.
when she was little, growing up.
Mhm. What about their relationships with their grandparents, your parents? What was your parents' relationships with your kids? How close were they?
With us,
With your kids.
they were very close. All of us are close.
Mhm.
We might not seem like we're close, we're getting old. As I've gotten older, I've become what they call an introvert.
Uh-huh.
I want to be at home and, yeah, but growing up, and we still see each other often,
Mhm.
more than a lot of siblings do. You know, one of my siblings is by here just about every day.
Mhm.
You know, if it ain't Wayne coming stopping by, it's Patrick stopping by. Or if it's not one of them, it's Curtis stopping by. You know, so growing up, we were a tight knit family. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't always, yeah, they had arguments or we had arguments, but my mother didn't allow us to walk around the house. Um, Say me and whoever had an argument over the last piece of pie,
Mhm.
you know. But the next morning, the next day, we weren't allowed to walk around and not speak. Even though you mad, you had to say, good morning. And
So your kids and your parents were had very close relationship. Do you feel like
especially Nikki, because
so that was the favorite?
Nikki didn't have a dad.
Mhm. You feel like she was like their favorite, or do you think your parents had favorites from what you could tell?
Yeah, but they had more than one favor. Um, Little Kurt,
Mhm.
my mom, I don't want to say she practically raised him, but from when he was a little tiny baby, mom had him. Regina was young when she had him. So my mother was doing everything. So he was her favorite, Nikki, and then there was Chavez.
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out which one was the first grandkid. I think Lil Kurt, then Nikki, then Chavez,
Mhm.
and then the rest. Yeah, then you. Because you're younger than Chavez, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they really leaned into that grandparent role. They really enjoyed being grandparents.
Yes, they did.
What are some of your favorite memories seeing them be grandparents?
Going over their house and all the grandkids running around. um, my mother cooking the big Thanksgiving dinners and everybody being there. Y'all came to, y'all was little.
Mhm.
Um, Christmas dinner. My mother always put up a tree, but she always cooked big Thanksgiving dinners. Everybody came.
Mhm.
Your mom, Shabay, everybody would be there. And not just Thanksgiving, but during the summer, when we all end up at mama's and my daddy throwing something on the grill.
Mhm. What advice would you give to somebody who is a new parent?
It's a new parent.
Mhm.
Enjoy it, because by the time you bat your foot and pat your eye, your baby is gonna be big and gone. So enjoy parenthood, embrace it. Um, to be to be blessed to have a baby.
Hmm. What were some of the most difficult parts about being a parent to you?
The world wanting to shield them from some of the bad and evil things in the world. And it's hard to do. I mean, you can teach your child, and that's what you should do, that's what you have to do, because um, they're not always going to be in your lap. You're not always going to, you're not always going to be able to hold their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And when they go out here in the world, it it can be a bad world, and that's the bad part about being a parent. You just wish you could just keep them covered,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't.
So, how old were you when you first became a grandparent yourself?
That's a good question. I thought I was too young to be a grandparent. Let's see, Caleb is 19.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to say 57.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
So,
68 now, and he's 19.
mm-hmm. So what was that like? Talk me through when you first found out you were gonna be a grandma.
I
All the
was shocked,
circumstances.
and I was reluctant. I'm like, I'm not old enough to be a grandmother, and no, and everything. Um, as the pregnancy progressed, it started growing on me. Me and Nikki going shopping together, picking out things for the baby. But at first, no. I
How old
felt
was she?
18.
So how did that make you feel?
I didn't think she was ready to be a parent. Um, she was graduating. She walked across the stage pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
But she wasn't like showing, yeah, but she was pregnant. And I felt like, you know, you're not finished yet. You need to go to college. You need to, and she's like, I'm going to do all that. But yeah, she was pregnant.
Mm-hmm. So how long did it take you to kind of come to a place where you were accepting it and
Like I said, during her pregnancy, as her pregnancy went along, and she was living with me, so I saw her every day.
mm-hmm.
And even though she was even though she was pregnant, that was still my daughter, and I had to take care of her and make sure she was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it started growing on me during her pregnancy.
How did that your initial feelings about it, how did that affect you guys' relationship?
Like I said, it didn't.
It
I
didn't.
still supported her.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So you
even
didn't
though I
let
wasn't happy at first,
yeah.
just kind of like my mother, you know. But that was my daughter. She needed me.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't know what she was doing.
Right.
You know. I'm sorry. She's a guard dog. Be quiet. Um, like I said, even though I felt that she was too young and wasn't ready to be pregnant,
Uh-huh.
on the flip side, she was my daughter and she needed me. She didn't know what she was doing.
Uh-huh.
She had questions. Mommy, why I feel like this? Mommy, should I go to the doctor?
Uh-huh.
So it didn't strain our relationship at all. It didn't strain our relationship at all.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of made us tighter.
Mm-hmm. So once Caleb was here, how did you feel?
I was happy.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like he was my baby.
Really?
Because he was my baby's baby. So he was my baby.
Mm-hmm. What were some things, some expectations you had as a new grandparent that were met, and then what were some things that you thought was gonna happen, you expected, and it did not happen?
That's a good question. Nah,
None. Nothing happened that you expected, or nothing that you expected, you were disappointed about.
nothing I was disappointed about. You mean far as with Caleb?
Yeah, as being a new grandparent.
He's every mother, every grandmother's joy child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah.
He was a good kid. His attitude was always good. He went to school.
Mm-hmm.
He ain't got nobody pregnant. No.
What were some of the things that you were the most proud of?
Well, my grandson,
Mm-hmm.
Caleb. His demeanor, his patience with people,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, his demeanor, how he's just a cool kid.
Mm-hmm.
He's humble. And yeah.
What about for your other grandchildren once they came around? Do you feel like you were the same level of excited, or did you have expectations and all of that stuff as well? Or was that like freshness of being a new grandparent kind of worn off and you had already got into the groove of it?
I had already gotten to the groove of it, but what made a difference between Caleb and my other grandkids is that Caleb was born from my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's my grand.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't say this. Boys, you know how they say mama's baby, daddy's baby? No, I know they my boys' kids, but they mothers
Mm-hmm.
and they grandmothers, they got,
It's a different dynamic
Yeah.
than being your daughter.
yeah. My daughter was living with me and that baby lived with me.
Mm-hmm.
But the girl, my son's say his baby mama, she lived with her mother. And or she be with her mother and the baby
Yeah.
be with them. That kind of made a difference. I mean, not in how much I love them,
Right.
but how much I'm involved in their lives.
Do you feel like because of that difference, you wished you had some of that closeness of being with them a little more
Yeah.
in comparison to like when Nikki had Caleb?
Yes.
Definitely. What are some of your favorite memories with your grandchildren?
I'm running around my house, running around my backyard, just enjoying themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my favorite. When we barbecue and they out there riding their little toys, you know, when I close my eyes now I can see them.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite part about being a grandmother?
Favorite part. Just looking at my grandkids. That's my limbs. at them and they part of me,
Mhm.
and I can see myself in them.
Mhm.
They said grandmother knows her grandchildren, and it's true. They might not look like her, but she know, and there be something about them, and she just know,
Mhm.
you know. And yeah, I love being a grandparent. Plus, you can send them back home. The ones that don't live with you. I think for what's over with though, like how Caleb lived with me, it's it's gonna be small. It might be Deanna,
Mhm.
it might be Raya. Ain't no telling, but I can see them getting mad at their parents and Grandma, I'm coming to stay with you. So
Mhm. What advice would you give to someone who is a new grandparent?
love and enjoy your grandbabies. To love and enjoy your grandbabies.
Mhm. What would you tell them
They're a
about?
reflection of you. They're your branch. They part of your creation.
Mhm. What would you tell them about kind of the boundaries with the parent? About letting the parent kind of figure it out, figure out how to, you know what I mean?
Oh.
Like, what would you tell them is important about letting your kid who just had the baby, letting them figure out how to be a parent? Do you feel like you were more hands off when it came to them figuring out their parenting style and all of that, or do you feel like you were more involved with it?
With Caleb, I was more involved.
Mhm.
And like I said, with the other ones, though, they had their mother and grandmother.
Mhm.
But
Do you think that's important to have let them figure it out, or do you feel like it's more important to?
I feel like it's important to let them figure it out.
Mhm. Why is that?
They'll learn. You have to learn. Parenting don't come with a book.
Mhm. Yeah. What? And the last question I have is, what would you want, like your future great grandchildren and so on and so forth? What would you want them to know about you, and talk as if they're watching this in the future?
Can you pause it for a minute?
Uh huh.